or the issue of the day, how sports, the sporting events in Africa, how Africa view it, in the way the Africans view sports in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up to 90s, yeah? And the way they view it today is not the same. And to discuss this issue today is with me in the studio, Tope Olandunjoye. And he's also an expert in sports because he's also a participant in sports, and he knows more about this issue, about the sports development in the underdeveloped or developing nations, and also in their counterparts in the developed world, in the Northern Hemisphere. So, Tope, please, can you make an input in this question?
When you say developing countries, not that Africa comes to my mind, but I'm sure that viewers in general might consider developing always is attached to Africa. That's why I wanted to.
It's not only Africa. It's not only. It's also include Asia. It's inclusive.
Yes,
South America is inclusive, and also here in Europe is also inclusive, because there are many impediments affecting the development of sports.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I wanted to be clear.
That is.
It's about how it changed within the years, in the last 40 years.
Yes.
50 years. Well, I wouldn't be able to talk about the 60s, 70s, or 80s, but definitely the 90s is where I started enjoying football, and I started realizing that it's, it was for me, it was exciting to look at professional football players playing a sport that I only played as a hobby, or played in my respective district in a club. And to me, the difference always was that to become a professional, there's a lot of work behind it. There still is, I think, but today it looks more common to try it than back in the days, because football was always connected to maybe somebody with a talent only having football as a way out of his predicament. Let's say if it's poverty, or if that's the only thing that he thinks he's good at. It wasn't something connected with school when I grew up. To see that today you have many sport academies, many schools that implements especially football into the curriculum is interesting for me to see, and I see a development there. I can't speak of how it changed in Africa. I might be able to to look at how it changed in Nigeria. That one, yes, because I'm Nigerian myself. I have parents who are from Nigeria. I visit Nigeria as often as I can, so I can see, especially looking at the national team, how the change has developed there. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tope. But I want us to go deeply into the perception of our parents,
Okay.
As it regards the development of talent of a child, development of the talent of a child in respect to the child's education and his sporting activities. Okay. How to harness the two to make the best out of a child. How the parents of 60s up to 90s, how they prevent their wards, from participating in sports, knowing that if you devote more time to sports, you don't have time to face your studies. And it is proven to them that children who excel in sports don't excel also in their academics. So with bearing this in mind, and the trend which has been debunked by the presence of also women participating in sports, and we're seeing the positive part of it. Yes, it is not only playing football, but also developing of other skills. Yes, in terms of their choosing field of knowledge.
I think if I can jump in now,
yes.
I think I tried already to touch on it in the last statement I made, which is football today seems to be more included in the curriculum. as in sports. I don't know. I don't know exactly if every school has sports attached to it without being a sports school, but I know that football now is more taken serious by many schools in the sense of
in the Western Hemisphere or the
well, I think in general, because I do think obviously there has to be an infrastructure in place. Definitely, it is more likely to see the infrastructure being in place in Europe. But this is a more political way of looking at it when we go into deep. But I do think that in Africa, especially looking at the French national team, there has to be a change of perception in Africa already, or in those respective African countries where the players are being taken from. I say taken from because it often looks as that if the players are doing well, they are French. If they're not doing well, we are being reminded of which African country they are from. That's why I'm saying taken from. And it's a phenomenon that I'm sure everybody who has been growing up or has been born in a European country in that respect, and maybe is playing for the national team, which makes sense because if you grew up somewhere, you are likely to be part of it, be it the social system or be it just being part of the country, and that's why I think yes, our parents, maybe I can talk of parents because I was born in the 80s, or I'm more 80s child. The perception that the parents had was sport is like that I believe is just for those that don't have any other talent, kind of a way. It's like to play football, it wasn't yet as being taken serious as it is today, because in my time I believe the players were just phenomenal, and maybe a parent didn't expect his son, or well, we start from sons because I will be the son, so I can make that example, being as talented as those players that they knew of. I can't remember those big names then, but in the 90s, as a Nigerian, you hear of the famous name J.J. Okocha. Then there are names like Finidi George, Amokachi, Amunike. So these are players that if you see them play, I'm sure for some parents that didn't spend time with the child or with the son on the field to see what is there, would have been not been able to understand that this could be the next Amunike, or no matter what his name is. Yeah? So what I'm saying is, this is where now things have changed. Players have shown us that there's some famous names that we could mention now, but I think it's not necessary to make that point, because we know that there's some players now that make sure that parents understand that your son can also be a very good footballer. And then schools now help parents to have a curriculum that they have been assured that also in education, we are there for your boy or girl now. Because if you look at the Ajax Academy, as being a best example, it is to me a proven example that things can change. But I do not know if it's accurate enough for me to speak on Africa or on Nigeria in particular, because there are many things involved that I wouldn't be.
Yes. There I will come in, because where a child was born determines a lot about the child, the growth of a child.
It seems so.
And his curriculum. Yeah.
It seems so.
So because a child born here in Europe, has got a well stipulated timetable, a daily timetable, seasonal timetable, for sports, for his academics and everything, But children born in Africa, that's why we are a government, Government also plays important role in seeing that they move in trend with the recent development, with the contemporary trend, a global trend, that a child, schools can also be built, in the remote area, so that they can, children don't need to trek up to 5 to 10 kilometers to the city to attend school, and by the time you get to the school, you're already worn and tired to understand what the teacher is talking about. You understand? And you have to trek the same way back home in the mid-afternoon sun of 39 degrees centigrade sometimes, and with all the problem associated with it. You understand?
I want to, because I grew up we're in Vienna, Austria now. I grew up in Vienna, so I want to believe that there's also a possibility, 80s, 70s in Austria, that infrastructure defined that problem. I think infrastructure is, today people don't understand the importance of infrastructure more than back in the days. I don't want to go into the political, geopolitical problems that are obviously the cause of why Africa, or why countries that are not able to be defined as developed having those issues. But I think when we go back to the infrastructure, we can stay in Europe and we can look at Austria in that respect of was it the same thing like in Vienna? We know we have the underground system, we have a bus system and a tram system.
Yes.
So now, depending on how the state planning is, the football fields are accordingly. They're accordingly, or let's say there's a way you can get there with the public transportation.
On time.
On time, of course, but is it the same way in the outskirts of Vienna? Is it the same way in other regions in Austria?
In other words, everything is timed.
What I'm saying is that I don't think it is as easy as we say countryside in Austria. Because I when I was young, I remember when I was small. I remember being in the countryside also, and it was a big difference. I also saw people trekking. I also saw people walking. I also saw people, I also saw farms. I saw land, and I saw, in that regard, underdevelopment. Why am I saying underdevelopment? Because development is a big word sometimes, but it's actually just the word that means something. That just means that building, and building started first in the city, I think. And in the city, it's easy to say, I can have a timetable, I can go to the bus station, I can look at the time, and the bus is coming in an interval that is suitable to where I want to go. But I don't think it's the same interval you have in the city. So I do want to say that, yes, I agree that there's a big discrepancy and a big difference in Africa, especially in Nigeria, because as a Nigerian, I prefer talking about Nigeria first, because that's more home. I can understand more, I can speak more on it. And I think politically, we know the issue. We can Google it, we can look at it from that perspective. But I think it's important to understand that when there's possibilities to invest in an infrastructure, I do think that thing can be solved. If the planning is according to, like you said, the plans of the government or the sports minister, etc.
Yes.
Because I think that is the main issue. That if the sports ministers or the people that who are in charge of that section of governing, that if they don't see the possibilities that comes with it, then obviously we have those big problems. And if these players are born now in Europe and they see it being better presented to them to play football,
yes,
to go to training, but then again, like I'm saying, infrastructure and then
Thank you very much for your input so far, Tope. We are discussing factors militating the development of sports, football, and other sports in Africa, and we know them. It is as factors also affecting the development of Africa, and also other parts of undeveloped world, the so-called third world countries. Because I think that the factors varies, war and displacement. You understand? Like the region where there is existing war, people don't live up to their potentialities. Students, even those in the sports. Circle and where the general human activities has been brought to halt, and people are losing their life and losing your limbs, your legs, your hand, and losing your eye because of problems associated with political or religious or. This is also problems affecting the development of sports. Yes, and where such problems, like the problem that's affecting the sports in Africa, it's not the same problem affecting sports here in Europe.
Exactly.
It can be vice versa. It can be.
But I think if you can chip in, please. I think it is important to understand when we say Europe, because it's easy now, because in a short period of time, and like I already mentioned that to save time also, we can throw out words Europe, Africa, and we hope that when somebody hears it, he understands that we're not talking about generalized Europe, generalized Africa. We are talking about
certain regions.
Known problems. Thank you, certain. But now, when you see regions, I do want to draw out that Germany, France. Okay, let's say the top 5 leagues in Europe.
Football leagues, you
Football
mean?
leagues, thank you. Football leagues in Europe. I think England, without a doubt. Then we can talk about Spanish league, the German league. I think the ranking now is German league. Then it should be Italian league and
Spanish league.
The Spanish league should be 3rd or 2nd.
Yeah.
Then there should
English league.
the first is English league. I think second one is Spanish league. Then we talk about Italian. No, sorry, I think
German league.
German league should be 3rd. Then 4th, probably Italian league. Then 5th is French league. Because I heard that French league has falling out of top 4. It's regardless at the end of the day, because comparing those leagues with East European leagues now, there's a big gap.
Still, a big gap, yeah.
Talkers of a gap now going further to the east when you talk about Russia, and I'm not saying that the leagues are not there. They are there. There is a setup. There's a construction that we can see, especially if you go to sports centers or sport magazines, you can see those leagues. But we know that the only thing that the only similarities would be the pitch and maybe the standard of the stadium. But what I'm saying is, here you can already see that what investment and what a concept can do. When I say concept, I mean English clubs or the English league in general. When you talk about the top tier leagues, Premier League, and then maybe Championship, then there's a big gap again. Because why? The money is most in the Premiership. TV money and all sorts of structures have been put in place for that league to be what it is today. To be able to now afford players who shown a talent that is worth the money. Now, if you don't have that money, can you have such a player? So I'm rather thinking, does it mean you have money, or does the value of the player say how good he is? These are questions that I'm more interested in because I do think.
Yes. That's where I want to come in. Personal fame, yeah, and some people grew from self-fame to national fame, yeah, in through sports, and also to change their citizen in order to have more self-freedom, yeah. And it pays. It pays both ways. What I mean is, as the person is going from, let's say, movement of players from South America to Europe, and from Africa to Europe, from Far East to Europe, there are still younger, growing up, talented, growing up sportsmen and women who look up to these people as role models, and will even like to be like them someday, even though he was born and bred and grew up in the ghetto, but right now he's there in the city and he's somebody, and they look up to be such people. And what do you think that has been the panacea that has propelled these people from the ghetto to the national limelight? Have you seen some degree of obedience and
I believe
being properly brought up and with respect?
My answer would be, when I have to go back to saying Vienna, Austria. Anybody? So I'm trying to make a bit of an advert for Vienna also, because Vienna has been the top 7, I think, in top cities of Europe or even the world. So people can have a picture of Vienna. The Austrian league, who hasn't been mentioned in the top leagues, also. So I don't wanna make it seem like I can compare it too much. But I want to say in Germany, I believe.
But it's
most
developing.
players- of course. But I want to say to land my point is, in Germany, I would like to take out to see that I don't think when I think about Germany, and Germany is a big country. I don't think about ghetto in Germany. I know that there is impoverished areas. I know there is poverty. I know because with the size of Germany, there is poverty in that sense because there's an economy. Wherever there's an economy, there's poor and rich. But I don't think that players now are comparable to players in Brazil or players in Romania when you talk about ghetto. When the player now says, let's say a German player now says, when we can talk about players that come from East Germany, then West Germany, but I don't want to go too far because we should be also more practical. And practical means if a player today says that his parents were working class parents and they did not have enough money to support his desire to play football, it's a difference between maybe not having the means to pay for shoes and to be able to afford certain gadgets that he needs to play the sport, than talking about somebody who did not have a field to play at the first place. Because where, like I said before, where development is, there I think someone can see change and someone can see hope. So I think the idea of somebody in Africa, be it in Brazil, be it in India, be it in Pakistan, be it in China, even though China now is a world economy, the dream of saying he came from poverty to play on the world stage, it only works if it's, if our mind understands that, yes, we're talking of the African player because we know that some African countries still have that fifth, sixth, I don't want to call it third, because when you say third world, it looks like pictures. There are some pictures we don't know about how poor they really are when they talk about poverty. I don't think this is necessarily the story in football today anymore. It is definitely a problem when it comes to exploitation, but when you talk about poverty in football, I think we really have to look at, how does a player still that is playing for Germany or playing for France, for all these countries now, how is he still talking about poverty in that regard when you know that in Romania, in Bulgaria, these are the countries where you know that there's poverty. I hope I'm not making it sound like there's no poverty. I want to say that there's always not enough emphasis on what do you really mean with poverty, because the layers are big, many layers to it, and these layers I want to rather take it to geopolitical problems, take it to political problems, to problems that don't have there's no space within this show, but there's also no space publicly to speak about big issues that these countries that are deprived from so many things, where the government cannot feed the youth with education, with possibilities, there's a big gap. Yet we like to pin, to not talk too much actually, just to say that we like to pin out a player that is giving us the description of maybe playing in Senegal, in a poor place in Senegal. Yes, it exists, but the problem of that poverty is not yet, there's a bigger picture to it. That's what I'm trying to say. This is why I always like to look at the good, which is players that come from academies, that did not have the talent, but through the academy, discipline, through hard work, through devotion, through the infrastructure now in those academies, has become a professional footballer, and if, depending on his talent, is even becoming a role model for.
Sky is the limit.
Thank you. Because I do think this is where now it is easier maybe to explain than, because I always have so much to say when it comes to poverty and countries, and because I know that there's more to it than just what the eye shows.
In other words, discipline. Yeah, a disciplined child has got a limitless stature. Yeah, in in this sports choosing field, yeah?
Depending on the possibility.
Depending on the possibility, but discipline first, yeah.
Yes.
Ability to
Exactly.
take instructions and abide by instructions,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
And people who abided by this simple, common ethics, we saw what they live to become of themselves and of their society. Yes. Thank you very much, Tupe. Time is running out of us, but before we go, I would like us to point out one of the issues we have in our today's broadcast, and that has to do with the culture which forbids women from participating in sports. Do you like female football?
Definitely, I enjoy it.
Do you know any lady playing football also?
Not personally, unfortunately. And I wouldn't want to, I'm bad with names, to be honest, but okay.
But you see them doing it?
I like, like, I think there are 3 players in the Nigerian national team in the Falcons that I admire. I like watching them. Why? Because they on the field, you know, as me, I'm an enthusiast in sport, because most sports that I watch, I barely can do that sport even. That's why I enjoy watching sport, and football is the only sport now where I can, you know, say that I used to play also. But when you say female football, I can advise anybody who hasn't started watching, when there's a World Cup, when there's a tournament especially, please watch. It's
that amazing. Involves female teams.
Female football. It's amazing how actually the logic of men's football, where you think a Chinese team will play against I would say a Pakistan team now, just to give you 2 games that you might not want to watch in men's football. Women's football now, it
got interesting.
Become an interesting match now if you just look at the sport itself. But I do think, as you said, that for when I think culturally, or when somebody forbids women to do certain things, and it's deeper than just words that I can express.
Like in Taliban case.
You know, I wouldn't want to go there yet, but I know what you're saying. What I'm saying is that if somebody can just for those moments, just forget the sense that maybe by gender it's females, yeah? Or, you know, maybe he has a bias towards females.
But don't you think that those ladies over there has got something to give out to the world if they were allowed to participate in sports?
Of course, I believe so. I think sports is, if someone understands sports, he understands that this is art. Sport is art.
Yes.
Yeah, it's art. It's art of the body. It's art of the mind also, because there are certain limits that athletes have shown us already that. You know.
Well, my friend Tope, it's been a great day with you here in the studio today. I hope to have you here sometime next week. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.